Good afternoon, Australasia, and welcome to session 2 of Strive to Thrive Thursdays. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. You are in for a real treat. Drop us a comment below and let us know where you're listening from. Say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Now, today we have a very special guest with us. Welcome to the call, Jill.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
Now, for those of you who don't know Jill is the founder and director of 6am Agency, a creative communications and PR company based in Sydney. They have a deep specialisation in wellbeing and good living, along with unmatched experience in the direct selling industry. I've had the pleasure of working with Jill for quite some years now, and she was actually involved in the launch of Jeunesse into the Australia and New Zealand market. You know, she is a talented woman, lovely to work with. We have been working with them quite closely over the last 6 to 12 months on our social media and getting some more attention on there. And one of the stats and one of the things I love about Jill is we sat down in our first meeting to look at how the month went, how everything's tracking, you know, and Jill quietly says, "Oh, I think you're going to be, you know, reasonably happy with the results, Rachel." And I thought, okay, well, you know, that's good, as long as I'm happy with the results. And then we went through everything, and the stat that she hits me with was absolutely crazy. That from October to November on our social channels, so including Facebook, WeChat, Instagram, etc., we had seen an increase of 33,937%. You know, and Jill says to me, "I think you'll be quietly happy." I was absolutely ecstatic with that result. You know, she's a pleasure to work for. 6am are an amazing company, and you are in for a real treat with her presentation today, guys. Over to you, Jill.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you very much, Jeunesse Global family, for having me on today. It's really an honor to talk to you in what is a very difficult time in business, but one that presents huge opportunity for Jeunesse Global as a leading direct selling organization in Australia and globally. So thank you for joining me. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the times that we're in and how to really maximize the opportunity that there is, but also traverse it very, very carefully so that we keep all of our stakeholders on side and we remain healthy. So the first thing I'd love to do is to share with you a quote from a famous marketer, a young man called Simon Sinek, who is known to be the guru and expert in understanding millennial audiences. He says, "Panic causes tunnel vision. Calm acceptance of what's happening in the day-to-day and calm acceptance of danger allows us to more easily assess the situation and see the options." I always talk about us being in an industry, healthcare, health and well-being, being an industry where we need to make a good, solid bottom line return. But we say that healthcare is an industry, human care actually is a calling. And that's really what this talk is about today. How do we stay close to the people that matter to us in business, our audiences, and traverse this time so that we come out of it the other side intact, not having offended anyone, making sure that we stay on the side of positivity and growth so that our businesses can flourish. So the first thing that would be good is to say, why are consumers uneasy? Now, a lot of this is obviously logical. You'll see that I've drawn this from a poll that was taken in the middle of March, a US Today Ipsos poll, which is one of the top research companies in the world. So there were many, many points that they mentioned about why consumers are uneasy, but the ones that I've selected to talk to you about are this. Number one is people are feeling powerless and vulnerable. We've got the silent enemy. It's a war like we've never seen. Having said that, as we talk today on the 6th of April, the curve is starting to flatten in Australia, but certainly not in the rest of the world. They're also uneasy about preparedness at home. That's why we saw the rush on toilet paper. That's why we saw the rush on foods and pastas and so forth, like we were bunkering down in a war. But also preparedness in public. We now go into Bunnings, we go into supermarkets, and we're wearing our masks, and most of us wear gloves. So we're on high alert to remain healthy and safe. There's also, though, and this is the major trend, is the fear of unfolding economic impact. And in fact, it's already started to unfold. We've seen major retailers shut down. We've seen millions of people without work. We've seen millions of people in queues waiting for the dole. But it's also the first time that many of us as entrepreneurs are in a crisis. Well, as you can see and hear from my age, I've obviously lived and worked through a few. We've survived the global financial crisis. We've survived 9/11. We've survived a few stock market dips. So the key is that we've learned along the way what we must do and what we mustn't do. Obviously, things can always go awry. But what today I'm going to do is give you some of those insights which will hopefully help you on your journey through this crisis and beyond in order to lift. The important thing to know is that my view is now is the moment for direct selling. You have all been prepared long in advance for this kind of working. Most of you have always working from home. You haven't gone to an office, and if you have, it's not out of necessity. You've always been able to connect with people, not only face-to-face, but digitally. How do we enhance that? So my view is that the new economy, the new way things are going to evolve, people will be able to the direct selling industry is now really coming into its own, and now is the moment. So the key is to success is to always put your customer in the middle, your audience in the middle of all of your thinking. Whenever you're thinking about strategies, communication, and so forth, always think to yourself, how would my customer, how would my downliner, how would the purchaser receive this message and relate to it? So that's why we say there are 3 key points. We need to evolve to customer-centric thinking. That means thinking about them first. Firstly, we need to get to understand their hopes, their fears, and their needs. Bearing in mind in this time, things are fluid, and what their fear is today may not be what they're fearing in 2 weeks' time, so we need to be alert to that. We also need to gain insight into their changed daily living patterns. So, for example, we know a lot of our distributors now have children at home. They need homeschooling and so forth. How do we manage our businesses around that? How do we take that into account so it doesn't become an issue with the family, or that it doesn't overwhelm the people that we're connecting with? How do we actually communicate if we suddenly have a gorgeous little 2-year-old pop into our meeting? What do we do? How do we relate to that? And lastly, we need to connect with relevance and authenticity. Now is the time for connection. We need to connect more than ever, but we've got to connect with relevance and with authenticity. Now, for example, is not about a hard sell. Now is about understanding how they're feeling, that they're fearful of their health, that they're concerned about their grandma who they haven't been able to see because she's in lockdown. What do we do in our communications with a connection to Jeunesse Global to make sure that it's relevant? So the question is, those are the 3 points, is how do we put all of these principles into action? Well, the first thing is let's get to grips with understanding the stages of this crisis. And we've come up with a way of defining it in 3 different stages. Number 1 is the phase that we're in right now, the crisis that we're in now. It's actually only been a matter of weeks, and we're already starting to see us kind of ease into a bit of a rhythm. I'm sure there are a couple of curlies that are coming our way, but generally speaking, we're in a bit of a rhythm. The next thing, which will take place over around about a 6-month period, is phase 2, which we're calling the recovery. But the recovery has got 2 different phases. One is the twilight zone, and by the twilight zone we mean that it's kind of things are going to happen which are not going to be set in stone, a little bit uncertain. We're going to start to find our feet in what we're going to call the new normal eventually, but we haven't set yet. And then we're going to move into what we call the new dawn, when those things we learned in the twilight zone, audience activities, consumer trends, business behaviors, and so forth, will start to settle. And then phase 3 will be the new reality, where things have really changed. Let's face it, we're never going back to where we were before this crisis started. So if we look at phase 1, the crisis now, we're living in a new way of life. Most of us are working from home. We've got to batten down the hatches. We're doing no discretionary spending. We're only looking for immune support or those kind of products. Health and wellbeing brands are absolutely flying. And I'm sure that you have all got a great opportunity at the moment with your brilliant products, Reserve, AM, PM, and so forth. Then in the twilight zone, mostly still working from home, but people are cautious about spending, except for healthcare and maybe wills. There's ongoing lockdowns. People still need problems solved. Discretionary spending is still cut, but we're starting to maybe order from Mr. Delivery or Uber Eats from our local restaurant and so forth. And then in the recovery phase 2, that's the new dawn. People will start moving again in the streets, walking about a little bit, most of them with masks. Some work from office will go back there. Planes will start flying. We'll do travel for short holidays within Australia, unlikely that we'll go overseas. Maybe the schools will be back. Life will not be back to 100% normal. There certainly is no international travel, and many seniors will still be inside. And you can see that life is starting to happen, but not completely. And then we're going to come out into the new reality. So what is the new reality? Will people actually want to go back and work in offices? Will people be cooking ahead of time and freezing a lot of food? Will we get freezer packaged food? Will that kind of explode? How will we communicate with each other? There are all of those kind of things that will become the new normal in business, and we need to traverse that time together and prepare ourselves for that as we manage our way through this crisis. So what we've got here is a wheel for looking at the key touch points and key activities we need to take into account when marketing in this crisis, in this downturn, and let's face it, it is a downturn, as well as beyond. So firstly, if we look at the top right, we say we've got to become a trusted partner. What does that mean? A trusted partner is somebody who cares for others and is on the journey without seeking reward, but providing counsel to those people throughout this journey. Somebody you can turn to, somebody you can bounce an idea off or concern or so forth. Secondly, we have to have the tools in place to prepare for the crisis and beyond. What does business look like for us now in direct selling? What can we do better? What can we utilize more from a Jeunesse Global perspective to take us through this time? Thirdly, without a doubt, we have to leverage the power of digital. We only have to look at what's happening in retail. It's crumbling around us. And online is where we have to be for communications, for selling and so forth. We have to upweight our social media activity, but that doesn't mean just delivering more posts a week. What it means is we've got to make sure that it's relevant and targeted for our audience. Which talks to the next point. We need to make sure that our content is creative so it can compete with all the rest of the content out there, and that it's informative, it provides value. We need to make sure that we've got lead generation, because let's face it, Reserve could potentially become out of stock because it's selling so much. We know that hundreds of vitamins are being sold out and they just can't keep up. How do we connect and make sure that our lead generation capability is strong and continues to flow even when we're out of stock? We also need to start looking at ourselves and positioning ourselves each as thought leaders in the space through public relations. And that also ties in with the first point, which was becoming a trusted partner. We need to reward our customers. We need to stay close to them so that when we come out of this, we are with them on the journey and beyond, because customers and our business partners and so forth are going to be very, very smart and discerning about who was with them during this time of crisis. And always everything needs to be underpinned by a good risk management or crisis management strategy, which we know Jeunesse Global has got well down pat. So what is this all about? It's really, we can draw an analogy between how we create friends in our day-to-day life. How do we do that? Generally speaking, when we need somebody, we say, what's your name? What do you do? Can you tell me a little bit more about you? So that's when we are informing and enticing. We then need to activate our relationships, and this is around new downliners, new distributors, new people who just want to buy the product. We need to activate that and say, we want to spend more time with you. We need to gain permission. We need to build trust before we can get into their lives. And then once that starts to build, just as we have in a friendship, we can reciprocate. We talk about, let's talk further. Can you keep me interested? How do we get more information? How do we create a discussion? And then ultimately it comes into advocating. So introducing people to others, where we build our downliners, where we sell in more product and so forth. And that in turn, if we can get that process right, so it's not going in a direct hard sell immediately, let's think about it as a friendship that we're building up. That sustained engagement will then deliver success. Now, one thing that we must mention, that fundamental to all of this, is we must build trust now. And the actions that we take now are key to that success. So a very quick slide on how do we build success. And I encourage you all to look at this and stress test everything that you do against it, be it your written communications, be it how you verbalize your connections and so forth. Number one is you want to always keep your promises. If you say you're going to do something, do it. You have to have the right mindset and the right ethics. Number two is you need to make suitable promises. And now more than ever is this important in the direct selling industry or any business. We need to make sure that we're selling correctly, the right products and the right services in the right tone and the right language. We can't go out of the regulatory guidelines. And number three is to be able to keep your promises. Do we have the right capabilities to deliver on what we've promised? And that's really important, because if we can't deliver, we don't have the right capabilities, we're going to fail. And all of those three things add up to trustworthiness. So a couple of points on becoming a trusted partner. In direct selling, absolutely key is we need to listen. We need to listen deeply, and we need to hear what our downliners or what our customers who are just buying products are saying. What are they feeling? What are their fears and anxieties? What are their hopes? And then from there, we need to support. We need to also remember to always follow the guidelines, know the do's and don'ts, what we should do and what we shouldn't do from a regulatory perspective, as well as from a human being perspective, general decency about the pressures we put on people or the pressures we don't. We need to also look at making sure that our social and digital channels present us as trusted partners. They're not just spam, they've got value. They educate and they inform and they guide through this time. If we're undertaking PR, and we urge you to speak to Rachel about this, rather than just go out on your own, because we know that the media is a minefield, needs to be handled very carefully. We need to think about what is going to position us as thought leaders in this space. What do we have authority to talk about? What can we give expert commentary about? But I urge you as well to talk to Rachel in this regard. And lastly is to have a risk management plan, to prepare and be ready. We will talk about this a bit later. So we've now spoken about how we build trust, how we build trusted partnership, but we also need to think smart. We need to think smartly about smart relationship building. So what does that mean? In this time more than ever, we know that people, many are hungry. Hundreds of thousands have lost their jobs, millions in fact. What do we do to make sure we're on their journey with them, still building our business, but not pushing them, not being opportunistic or pressurizing them? That is absolutely key. And we know that in the direct selling industry in past times, there've sometimes been problems with people overstepping the mark, as we do have in any industry. We have people who become a little bit pushy at times. We need to be mindful of that. We need to maintain our customer relationships now more than seek profit. Now is not a time to seek profit. It is to connect and build relationships. Yes, we need to sell. Yes, we need to do things that put food on our table, but now is key to building connection and relationships. We've got to build our know, like, and trust factor. Which means we've got to build our profiles. We've got to build our likability, because let's face it, being likable is part of the success that we have as people in the direct selling industry. And we've got to build trust, which we've spoken about. Show them value as a trusted advisor. Help them understand how to navigate social media or how to navigate digital, which they may have been thrown into. Importantly, don't pitch to people. Get people coming to you rather than chasing them. And why would people do that? People come to you because they believe that you're a trusted partner, knowledgeable, experienced, trustworthy, and empathetic, and focus on their needs rather than your sale. Now, obviously, when we've got a brilliant products like Reserve and AM/PM, it's very enticing and we want to go out and sell. Well, we've got to really go in on the way of what are their physical needs, what are their needs now in their health routine and so forth. So how do we then, again, ask the question, put these principles into action? So let's drill down into a couple of those key pillars that I spoke about, are the touch points of marketing in a downturn. Number one is we can look at digital power. A couple of tips and tricks for you to look at, a checklist as such, which will help you now running your businesses in this time. And actually, these are tips and tricks which you can use moving beyond the here and now, out into the new dawn, out into the new normal and beyond. Firstly, let's look at productivity and automation. Let's face it, without driving to have meetings with people, we can pack in so much more time into our days that enables us to deliver a good result. So whilst we miss meeting people every day, this is not such a bad thing that has happened, and we can certainly ride out the storm. A couple of tips. Have a look at a tool, a free tool called Trello, which is a Trello board which enables us to manage multiple things on one day for a month, a year, and so forth. It enables you to plan all of your day work, your content, your meetings, and so forth, and you can give access to key people. Our teams are all connected to one Trello board. Or you can use a shareable Google document to track your daily tasks and progress. It leaves more time, of course, for family. Secondly, some of you have your own websites, although you should ultimately be using the core website that is run, a very smart website by Jeunesse Global. That is the hero in your business to which everything should be focused. But you could add a landing page to your website which is relevant to today's crisis, providing tips and guides and importantly capturing data to build your email list. You could add a landing page which says we're now in this crisis. 5 things you can do every day to motivate yourselves, 5 things you should do from a health perspective, and so forth. And every time somebody comes on, you can invite them to sign up to your list and maybe take on or download a downloadable one-pager on managing businesses in a crisis, leading a good life in a crisis, leadership in a crisis. Then an online booking tool, a very easy plugin which you can add to your websites to make sure that people don't have to phone you and you don't have to look at your diary. They can just look at your online diary and go in and book in time in allocated time frames. FAQ functionality, that's frequently asked questions. We know that frequently asked questions come up all the time about products, about selling, about how do I navigate my way through this crisis. If you have an FAQ page, you can continually update it daily or weekly with the questions that you get. Firstly, it helps from a search engine optimization perspective, but also it enables you to cut down on the questions that you continually need to answer and rather spend more time connecting and getting closer to that person who wants to connect. And then last but not least, e-commerce functionality, of which you have a very powerful source on the Jeunesse Global website. But just mentioning here that if you wanted to, you could add that functionality, although it needs to be part of the guidelines. So perhaps not relevant for you. So that's digital, a couple of tips. The next thing is the power of social, and here's a quick checklist. Number 1 is keep the conversation going. So what does that mean? You should have regular posts across all of your channels so that people expect it. So for example, we post on a Sunday night, on a Tuesday, on a Thursday night. So we post 3 times a week to make sure people are connecting, and it's regular across all of those channels, be it Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. Get frequency right and the contact right. Offer content that is valuable. Don't just put out pretty pictures. We'll talk about that. Get the channel mix right. Make sure that you're on the right channels. Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on TikTok? And so forth. It really depends on the audience. Consider how you can continue to offer value after your first contact. So somebody has made contact the first time. It's just like the friendship, right? There's a process. There are 5 steps to getting really close to somebody. Look at the content that you're offering them across and along that journey, and is it taking them down the sales funnel and into a great solid relationship? And then respond to the voice of the customer. If your friend Nancy Smith is having a really tough time and you know you're talking to her, you're sharing content with her, make sure that you share information that's actually going to help alleviate her angst. Maybe her husband has lost his job and so forth. So be in tune with that. Just like we said in the beginning, it's all around customer-centric thinking. And then last but not least, amplify. You have to pay for play. You've got to pay for targeted acceleration and amplification of social. And I think when Rachel gave that very nice accolade to the increase in performance of the Jeunesse Global Social, the one thing that that we did on that was to really amplify each post. We put $100 or $150 behind each post. That was one of the reasons, 3 core reasons. We upgraded the content and the copy as well. Which gets to our next point, talking about content. Creativity is key. We call it thumb-stopping creativity. Remember, there are millions and millions and millions of posts and feeds within your audience's feeds. What we've got to do is we've got to make sure that the content that comes through is creative. We've got to make it simple though, and the simple we've got to make exciting. It's got to be distinctive versus different. And here's a key nuance we need to keep in mind. What is something that is going to be distinctive and reminds people that says, aha, that belongs to Jeunesse Global. It's got a distinctive look and feel versus just being different for the different sake. It needs to be purpose-driven, and purpose is high on the agenda now. What does that mean? It shouldn't only be a post about product and another one about product and another one about product. It needs to bring to life the purpose. So the Jeunesse purpose is making life better for people, making lives better. How do we bring that to life? We look at motivation. We look at unpacking fears. We look at inspiration. We look at helping them in their lives, women who now have children at home, and so forth. So those are the kind of things we need to connect back to our purpose, which is around making life better. It's got to connect emotionally, and sure, 1 in every 3 or 4 posts need to be about product. We don't necessarily have to have a deep emotional connection on that, but it can serve to help people on this very difficult journey. People are struggling with sleep, people are stressed, people are short of money, and so forth. So how do we connect emotionally? And we go back again to understanding the sentiment of the audience. And then utility. Utility means providing value. We cannot stress this enough. You have to provide some kind of value exchange when you're asking people to read a social post in their busy days and lives. Is it 5 things to tighten your budget? Is it 6 ways to get a better sleep? Is it 3 things you need to know about the reserve cherry? We know a lot about resveratrol and so forth. How do we amplify that? Things which are going to educate and inform, and in some instances provide levity and fun, but only where relevant. So a bit of a synopsis of that. Let's go a little bit deeper into creating informative content. I keep on saying trusted partner content. So is there a weekly post from you as a distributor with a handheld video? Can you put that onto Instagram stories? Is it Rachel's Friday wrap up? That can be all channels. We need to provide the content, as I said earlier, with a high level of value exchange, essential updates, but don't try and be the government. You don't have to give them updates on the COVID crisis. Don't try and be a lawyer and tell them the legal ramifications of what's happening in the HR world. But you do have authority and permission as a lifestyle brand to give updates on tips and tricks around living a good life, living a better life, living a calmer life, being able to sleep more, and so forth. If you know somebody who's a naturopath, get them maybe to provide some information for expert opinion on nutrition ideas, things around sleep, around stress, around anxiety, around childcare, and so forth. Give them emotional support and inspiration, for this too shall pass, and we need to make that our hashtag. We need to know that we're going to get through this and come out the other side. History has told us we always were, and then purpose again. There are a multiple number of different formats of content. Written content, that's for social posts or a blog post. Stills, which are great pictures, images, but remember it needs to be distinctive. Dynamic content, so that's content, for example, that you might share from the Jeunesse Global social channels. You'll see a lot of content which moves and sizzles and shakes and really captures people's attention and gets cut through. And then, of course, video content, of which that is the most powerful for search engine optimization and audience engagement. Cheap ways of doing it. iPhones are brilliant these days. Do an interview with one of your colleagues. Do an interview with your downliner. Do an interview with your leader. Video some interesting content for storytelling. And then share from credible external sources. So there are many, many external sources that we look at from a global perspective in terms of content that we look up to. Have a look at the World Economic Forum. Have a look at Science Daily. Have a look at a multitude of those where you can actually source great content that you can share. But remember, the content belongs to them. So do the right thing and make sure that you credit them. In terms of your social content planning, there are 4 stages. You need to think it through. You need to understand what you're going to do. You need to create a content plan. What are the pillars that matter? Do we look at lifestyle? Do we look at product? Do we look at the science? We need to create ideas and concepting. We then need to engage and make sure that we're targeting our right audiences, the audiences that are relevant to us that we want to reach. And then we need to analyze. There's no point in putting social media out there and not actually looking at how it's performing. Facebook Ads Manager is very good. The data is outstanding and very rich. Anyone can have a look at it to make sure that we're on track. And you know, it's not always going to be right. Sometimes we see a major dip, but then off we go again and we recreate it. The next post, we get better at it. So don't be frightened of that. It's all a journey. I then mentioned lead generation. And I say here is if you can't sell today, make sure you can sell tomorrow. And what does that talk to? That talks about data capture. If you're out of stock, capture your customer details now and promise to deliver it later. But do it. Don't not deliver. We spoke about a landing page. In the landing page, you may have a data capture plugin, which actually is able to capture people incoming with 1 or 2 downloadable assets that they can read. But in order to download, you need to capture their data. Institute those lead generation call to actions and mechanics on web and social. And if you find that you've got stagnating sales after this panic, shift some of your budget into lead generation activity. And what does that mean? Into search engine optimization or into amplifying your social posts. Remember, though, we're dealing with people. Healthcare is a calling. This industry that we're in is a calling. Make sure that you invest in goodwill. Do the tiny little surprise and delights that really matter. So take this opportunity to recognize your most long-standing and valuable customers. Connect with them. Increasingly, people are leaving email behind and they're looking at WhatsApp and text first. Send them a Friday greeting with a flower or something that is inspirational. Get them on that list. Use a different technology that we have. Deliver a care package to your most valuable customer, particularly if you hear that they haven't been well or their mother hasn't been well and so forth. Use that as an opportunity to connect. That's the big word. Add value to your shipment. Find out if you can put a handwritten note in the shipment that goes out, or even a chocolate. Ask your upliners to see if that may be possible. Send them birthday greetings, and when coffee shops open up for deliveries, send them a cup of coffee or order something from T2, for example, to share with them. And importantly, I can't stress this enough. We have to all, as human beings, adopt a growth mindset. Now is the time for personal development. And personal development is going to take us to higher levels of success in our relationships, which includes relationships in business. And we know with direct selling, it's all about relationships. If you're likable and trustworthy, you're going to get there. Spend half an hour a day each reading about how to become a high performer, self-growth, awareness, and self-actualization. There are hundreds of blogs and websites online to read. I personally get 3 or 4 newsletters every morning that I read without fail, just half an hour, to consider how I was the day before and how can I perform the day ahead. Deliver that care pack, add more value. So in terms of risk management, that is absolutely key, and I said it underpins everything. Be prepared for an escalation in any crisis, be it around a crisis, pardon me, be it around a product, an activity, a conversation that you've had, or just something in the industry. Here's the thing, Jeunesse Global have got some of the best crisis management people on the case, on the brand for you. So don't try and handle it yourself. Let Jeunesse Global, through Rachel, manage any crisis. Take careful notes of anything concerning you and immediately contact her. Jeunesse Global is well prepared, as I said, and they can really get into motion their full crisis management plan. There are, of course, always other opportunities to be found. Think about your delivery orders and how you can do that. Greet better. What kind of impression are you making when you greet? If you're talking to somebody who's a millennial or somebody who may be in their 60s or somebody who is of another heritage. Iron out business inefficiencies. I know now I'm looking at how I structure my mornings better. So I can get onto a 7:30 Zoom call every day with our leaders. Read past feedback from customers. What do they love or what do they hate, and take time to fix it now. But keep in mind your audience at the center of everything you do, and you will find opportunities which can make the most of every situation. And we say to ourselves, no matter what conditions, if there's a crisis, if everything is collapsing or if everything's starting to stabilize, the conditions are always present to make of an opportunity that you can grow. And to that point, I'd like to invite you to look at our website, www.the6amagency.com.au. We've written a free health and wellbeing communications guide, a bit of a guide that you can use as a checklist for brands and businesses like yours in the current crisis and beyond. And remember, I truly believe that the direct selling direct selling industry is now set for absolute success. You have already been working remotely. You already know technology. Now's the time is just to amplify your connection with others. Listen to them. Play into where they are in their lives, and you are sure to succeed. And I'm sure grow with one of the best brands in the world, the best products. I can't say enough. Reserve, AM/PM are absolutely outstanding, as are the scientific advisors and the rest of products for Jeunesse Global. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Jill. You know, I got so much out of that myself, but again, you know, the main point that I got out of that, and it's what we've been talking about now for quite some time, is, you know, build that trust during this time and stay connected. You know, I again cannot, you know, put enough emphasis on how important it is to stay connected during this time. I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you so much for being with us, Jill. I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and to the Jeunesse Global family, thank you for having me.
Bye, guys.